His voice echoed across the long glass table, sharp and titled, almost rehearsed. My dad, the CEO, is giving all 8 rental houses in Florida to me. Richard, too bad, you're getting nothing. 13 years of your useless hard work, wasted. The boardroom erupted with polite laughter, the kind that sounds like applause dressed as sympathy. I watched their smiles reflect off the polished table, each face glowing with a kind of relief that they weren't the ones being humiliated in public. My wife's brother leaned back in his chair, soaking in the moment. My wife stared at me with that familiar expression, an apology hidden beneath pride. Like she wanted to say something but didn't dare. I stayed very still, blank, cold. All I did was smile. Not because I was amused, not because I was shocked, but because the moment had finally arrived. The moment I'd been walking toward for months, quietly, silently, while everyone else believed I was sleepwalking through life. "You really don't know, do you?" I said softly. The room went silent. He froze, jaw tightening, as if something in my tone reached inside his chest and squeezed. "No, what?" he shouted, voice cracking at the edges. I didn't answer. Not yet. Because the truth wasn't born today. It began long before this board meeting, long before he ever imagined inheriting anything. And now, finally, the story could unfold. It started with a slip. A single line in an email my wife forgot to delete. "Don't worry, once Dad signs everything over to you, Richard will be out of the picture." I read it 3 times. Not the words, those were predictable, but the casualness, the certainty, as if the past 13 years meant nothing, as if every late night, every deal saved, every crisis I carried on my back was simply leverage in someone else's strategy. I didn't confront her, not then. Instead, I watched the way her phone lit up at midnight, watched the way she minimized screens when I walked into the room, watched her brother start appearing more often at the office, giving tours of departments he'd never set foot in. Pieces. Slow, drifting, innocent pieces, until they weren't innocent anymore. Then came the meeting I wasn't invited to, the one held at her father's estate, the one she claimed was about family restructuring, a phrase that felt like a knife wrapped in gift paper. When she returned, she didn't kiss me. She didn't look at me. She just went upstairs, closed the door, and stayed on the phone for an hour. Whispers, laughter, plans. My chest tightened, but not with heartbreak, with clarity. The betrayal wasn't spontaneous. It was coordinated, calculated, agreed upon by all of them. And the sickest part? They believed I was too loyal, too blind, too harmless to notice. I realized then, they weren't plotting against me. They were underestimating me. A bigger mistake than betrayal. I began documenting every conversation, silently, every financial request, every meeting they excluded me from, every whispered comment behind half-closed doors. I learned that the Florida rental houses weren't just properties. They were the CEO's retirement plan. And his son, my dear brother-in-law, believed he deserved them simply because he shared blood. He didn't know blood didn't matter in the boardroom. But I didn't move yet. Not until I had everything. I reviewed the company bylaws at night, alone in the study. Not because I suspected anything, but because I needed to. Buried deep in the original charter was a clause no one had referenced for decades. All major transfers of real estate assets require unanimous board approval. Unanimous. And guess who had quietly been on the board for years? Me. A position granted after negotiating the company's largest international deal. A detail they'd forgotten, or ignored, or dismissed because it didn't serve their narrative. I didn't remind them. Let them build their little empire on assumptions. Let them stack the cards as high as they wanted. I simply removed one card, a silent one, a legal one, one that would make everything collapse with a whisper, not a shout. Then I began quietly acquiring shares, small ones, scattered, indirect, through shell accounts they would never notice. By the time the board meeting was scheduled, I wasn't just a member, I was the largest private shareholder. The truth was simple. They thought they were preparing to exile me, but I was preparing to bury them with their own signatures. The room held its breath as I slid a folder across the table. No theatrics, no anger, just paper. Inside were documents they never thought existed. Proof of the unanimous approval clause. Proof of my controlling shares. Proof that every decision they'd made behind my back was legally void. My wife's brother opened the folder. His smile died first. Then his posture. Then his voice. This isn't possible. My wife leaned over his shoulder, expression draining into something pale and frightened. Her father, the CEO, sat back slowly, as if gravity had increased. "You set us up," he whispered. I shook my head. "No, you set yourselves up. I just let you." I stood, calm, detached. "You spent months planning to erase me. You assumed I wouldn't read, wouldn't think, wouldn't fight." I looked directly at my wife. "You assumed loyalty meant blindness." She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her brother finally snapped, "Give us the documents, we'll renegotiate." "No," I said. I handed my final statement to the CEO, a formal notice. I wasn't blocking the transfer of the Florida properties, I was taking them, all 8. Fully, legally, irrevocably. Signed off by the majority shareholder. The CEO's breath trembled. My wife covered her mouth. Her brother stumbled back like he'd been hit. I walked to the door. "Richard," my wife whispered, voice breaking, "please." But she was already behind me. All of them were. In the hallway, the world felt quiet, peaceful, almost weightless. I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Not hurt, not betrayed, just free. They had handed me everything while trying to take everything away. The irony tasted cold and clean. As I reached the elevator, I heard my wife's brother behind me, desperate. "Richard, tell me, what don't I know?" I didn't turn. "You should have read the bylaws," I said. The elevator doors slid shut. My final thought was simple, steady, and absolutely true. People fear the storm they can see. They forget the quiet one already standing in the room.